Hey guys, Adam here with AmericanTrucks.com, and today we're taking a quick look at listening to and installing the Corsa Sport dual exhaust with the gunmetal tips available for the 19 and newer 5.7 Ram with the factory dual exhaust. You should be checking this out for your factory dual exhaust equipped Ram if you're looking to switch things up from the factory restrictive and otherwise pretty tamed 5.7 exhaust that it comes with off of the Dodge line, with something that's going to be a lot more aggressive, a lot deeper in tone, and something a little bit rowdier. Now this, guys, you just heard from our sound clips, I'm going to give 3 out of 5 on our loudness meter, and I'd go as far as saying maybe even 4 out of 5 at cold start. At cold start, you're going to start this guy up and it's going to be super loud, really aggressive, not ear-popping inside the cabin, but noticeably more aggressive than the factory one. As you start to get going and things start to warm up from red light to red light, it's going to have a deeper, throatier exhaust sound. And then, of course, at wide open throttle, things are going to be a loud, aggressive bark. Throughout the entire RPM band, it's never going to be super drony inside, almost no drone whatsoever, even at highway speeds, but it is noticeable from the outside of the vehicle. So that's why I'm giving it 3 out of 5 on our loudness meter. The Sport exhaust from Corsa is known to be a nice streetable exhaust. This is going to be a really good best of both worlds option for the daily drivers out there looking to have an easy conversation inside the cabin or listen to music without having to crank it to overbear the exhaust itself. So if you're looking for something that is ear-popping and really at the top end of the volume spectrum, check out the Corsa Extreme option. And if you're looking for something maybe a little bit less tamed, I'd recommend something like a Borla Touring. Now, Corsa does have a couple of different tip finishes available in the category. This one here is a 5-inch satin gunmetal tip, which is really a dark gray with a little bit of a sheen to it, but not so glossy that I would call it a gloss gray. Now, if you're not a fan of this gunmetal, which I think is super unique, looks really good on our truck here, if you're not a fan of that, they do have a more traditional satin polished finish where you get a little bit more of a polished sheen to it that looks a little bit more attractive than the factory polished tips and also in the 5-inch finish. Now this guy here is made of 304 stainless steel mandrel bent tubing, so it's going to reduce all of the airflow kinks you get out of a factory exhaust. It's got smooth mandrel bends. And the 304 is the highest quality option you can get in the category. Now the 304 does carry a higher price tag because it is the most corrosion and rust resistant, something I would 100% recommend for guys like us located in wintry weather areas, seeing a lot of road salt in those winter months. We all know that that can take a toll on the underbody of your truck, specifically the exhaust components, so having 304 can go a long way for durability, corrosion, and rust resistance. Now if you're looking to cut price a little bit there, you can always check out some of the 409 stainless steel options, but of course is known to be a top premium brand, so they have the 304 across the board. This is going to come in around $1,200 here, and it's made for the dual exhaust equipped factory Rams. If you have a 19 and newer Classic, this guy's not going to be for you. And if you have a 19 and newer new body Ram, but a single exhaust, this won't be for you. This is specifically for dual exhaust Rams. It's going to be an easy bolt up. I'm going to call it 2 out of 3 wrenches on our difficulty meter here. I'm going to show you guys everything start to finish using some pretty simple hand tools. It'll take you about 2, maybe 3 hours from start to finish. What do you say we get started? Rolling. First step here, we're going to grab our hanger removal tool and pop the hanger off right above our resonator on our passenger side tailpipe. The driver's side tailpipe is one piece all the way back to the muffler inlet, so we're going to attack that later. So for right now, we're going to do this, and I've lubricated it with WD-40. That makes life a little bit easier. All right, next step, grab your ratchet and your 15mm deep socket, and we're going to loosen up the clamp holding the tailpipe to the rest of the exhaust assembly. All right, hanger's out of position, clamp is loosened up. Let's get this exhaust pipe off. All right, so at this point, we're going to focus on our driver's side tailpipe. Now, like I said, it's all one piece. I have a pull jack here right behind the resonator just to give it some support once we start disconnecting things. I am going to remove this tip, however. Removing this tip gives you another foot, maybe foot and a few inches of extra space that you don't have to worry about feeding out of the frame. So we're going to take this guy off with a 13mm socket. Next, we can pop the hanger out of the isolator using our hanger removal tool right above that resonator. All right, so now we can disconnect the hangers right above the muffler outlet. There's one on each side. Grab your hanger removal tool and get these guys off. Now, as you can see, I have a pole jack here supporting this as well. So we have two different points of support for this exhaust. Now for this one, it's tough to get the hanger removal tool in here, so I'm gonna use my pry bar to get this guy off. All right, so next up, we're gonna focus on this flange here. Now you could bypass this and go straight back to the cat, but that's a lot of exhaust to take off in one piece, so I'm gonna separate it here. Now, once we have this taken care of, there is one more hanger to remove, but for now, grab your 16mm socket and disconnect these two bolts. All right, now when you pop this guy out of the hanger isolator, this is all gonna come loose, so you wanna be prepared for that. Before we do so, there's a ground strap here. I'm just gonna disconnect that from the factory tubing. All right, so that way it dangles here and we can reconnect it to our new exhaust later. So now we can grab our hanger removal tool and pop that guy off. All right, at this point you can pull off the exhaust from the muffler back to that driver's side tip. All right, now you can take this exhaust off. All right, so we got our factory exhaust off of our 1957 Ram, and it's on the ground here next to our Corsa Sport dual exhaust with the gunmetal tips. I want to go through some similarities and differences between the two kits here, and I understand that on the ground it's a little tough to visualize what it would be like on the truck itself, but oriented similar to what it is on the floor is how it will bolt up. Now, starting at the front end of the vehicle, obviously we're reusing the factory resonator pipe that's still on the truck. If you are replacing that with, say, a Corsa 3-inch resonator delete pipe, you'll obviously be installing that as well at the back end. But we're reusing the factory pipe, so it's gonna move on straight up to the muffler. Now the muffler is a little bit bigger from Corsa as it compared to the factory muffler, which is usually the other way around. Now this sport muffler here from Corsa is gonna be a little bit less restrictive than the factory option here. It's gonna let a lot more of the volume get out. Now the factory muffler on my right here is gonna minimize that sound. Your 5.7, it's a Hemi. You wanna hear the Hemi motor, you wanna hear the power coming out of that 5.7. Not really gonna be the case there with the factory exhaust, especially not with that muffler. So even though the muffler is larger from Corsa, it is, number one, a little bit lighter weight, and number two, gonna let some of that sound through. Now this is the sport version. They obviously have a Corsa Extreme, which is the loudest of the loud in the category, at least among the loudest of the loud. A little bit of a different muffler there. This is more of that streetable style. Coming into the muffler is a 3-inch diameter pipe. Going out of the muffler are dual 2.5-inch diameter pipes. That step down is to allow for that dual exhaust to go through. That's something that you also exhaust, although this is just a little bit bigger in diameter. Now those pipes are mandrel bent to reduce any of the kinks, any of the turbulence or airflow restriction that would otherwise be caused by your factory exhaust pipes. So that's going to help give you a little bit more power. Moving on, you'll also notice that the tailpipes do not have the factory style resonator or mufflers, the bullet style mufflers before the tips. So that's going to also help reduce all of that restriction. Your factory exhaust has a lot of kinks, a lot of turbulent points in the exhaust airflow. Not going to be the case here, opening things up a bit. Again, mandrel bent pipes. Finally, tips. Huge difference over the factory ones. Your factory tips are right around 4 inches. They're slash cut, double walled, so they are a little bit more aggressive than most factory tips, especially with that dual exhaust rear exit, but they're just not super attractive. They still look very shiny, very factory traditional chrome look. It blends in a lot with the chrome rear bumper, but we still want to make it a little bit more aggressive. The Corsa gunmetal tips are 5-inch diameter tips, double walled, super aggressive with a gunmetal polished finish. So it's a little bit more satin, a lot less of that high gloss, but it still has some sheen to it. And it's got the Corsa name in almost a bronzish color on it, a really cool color match that's gonna look really good on our 19 Ram. So if you're not into the gunmetal, they also of course have the more traditional polished finish. They also have black tips available if you're looking for a full stealth. This just gives you that stealthy look with a little bit more of a unique color finish. With all that said, we're gonna start with our muffler, bolting it up to the factory resonator pipe. Again, if you're replacing the resonator pipe, you wanna do that first and then move on to where we're gonna pick up from. First step for the install, we're gonna grab our muffler. Make sure you have your factory gasket put on the end here. I've already transferred mine over, just clips right on. Lubricate your hanger isolators. I'm gonna slide this guy in first. That's gonna be up by our resonator pipe. Just like that. Swing it up and connect it to the ones over the axle. Definitely helps to use some lubricant like WD-40 or PB Blaster. You just slide right in. All right, so now with this guy hung up by itself, we can bolt it up to our factory resonator pipe. Again, this is the point where if you're not using the factory resonator pipe, use the appropriate hardware to bolt it up to your aftermarket one. So I'm gonna slide the bolt in the factory way. I'm gonna lift this guy up, and you kind of just gotta pinch them together. Just like that. Once you have them pinched together, grab the nut. We're gonna thread that guy on the back. All right, so that's gonna hold that on for a second. Do the same thing for the bottom. So once you have this guy on, you can grab your socket and wrench and tighten these guys down. Gotta make sure that gasket's in between though. All right, so now you can grab your 15 socket and tighten these guys down, just making sure that they line up evenly. All right, once you confirm that that gap is closed, we can move on. Because the muffler is vertical, the top outlet here goes to your driver's side, the bottom's gonna go to your passenger side. I'm gonna focus here on our passenger side first, so we insert that S-pipe into the bottom outlet, put our clamp on, now let's tighten it down. All right, now when I tighten down this clamp, I'm gonna get it nice and snug, but still leave a little bit of room for adjustment so we can make sure we align everything properly. All right, now for the passenger side tailpipe, I've got a clamp inserted. We're gonna feed this guy over top of that subframe there, connect it to the pipe. All right, once you have that connected, swing this guy up and insert it into that hanger. Insert that into the hanger isolator. Once you have that connected and you like the position, feed that clamp all the way back and tighten it down. All right, next for our tip, you're gonna insert a clamp there, slide it over that tailpipe, and you have the ability to push it in a little bit more, stick it out. I like to make it just a little bit flush with that. Now we also have the Corsa name here, and because this isn't slash cut, you can decide if you wanna tuck that guy up so you can't really see the Corsa name. You can put it on the side, on either side. I like putting it toward the outside of the vehicle there, so I'm gonna put it toward our passenger side, just like that. Now we can tighten down the clamp. All right, now I like to rotate the clamp so the bolt head's at the top so you can't really see it underneath the truck like that. So just tighten that down. All right, let's move on to the driver's side. All right, start driver's side. We're gonna feed this pipe over, making sure we have a clamp on the end here, and it's gonna connect to the top outlet on our muffler. Once you have that seated all the way, make sure it's facing the appropriate direction, facing sort of around the spare tire, and then tighten down that clamp. All right, for this pipe, we're gonna connect it to the same pipe we just installed, making sure, again, we have a clamp on there. Once you have that situated, this guy up and connect it to that hanger. All right, slide your clamp over and tighten it down. All right, last step here, put your final exhaust tip on along with a clamp. Make sure it's oriented properly. I like to put that Corsa name on the outside again, tighten it down. All right, at this point, Make sure they're positioned properly under the bumper. Go back and tighten down all your clamps and you're good to go. That's gonna wrap up my review and install for the Corsa Sport dual exhaust system with the rear exit and the gunmetal tips, available for the 19 and newer 5.7 Ram with the factory dual exhaust. Get yours right here at AmericanTrucks.com.